Professor Asinake Kefale. Professor Asinake Kefale is an associate professor of political science at Addis Ababa University in Ethiopia. Dr. Asinake holds a PhD in political science from Leiden University, and his research has been mainly on migration and political economy, on which he has published extensively, including his 2013 Routledge book, Federalism and Ethnic Conflict in Ethiopia, a comparative regional study. Dr. Asinake's most recent book, co-edited on the political economy of youth migration, is titled Youth on the Move, Views from Below, on Ethiopian international migration, published by Hearst in 2021. I'll hand it over to you then, Dr. Asinake, and you'll have about 12 to 15 minutes. Take it away.
Yeah. Thank you, Moses. Is it shared as a screen, Moses?
Yes, it is. It is. You're good to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
but you can play full screen if you want.
Yes, full screen. Yes, okay. It's full screen now.
Yep. Please go ahead.
Yes. Just a moment. Let me put a timer. Okay, good. Thank you so much for the invitation and for organizing this seminar. I'm going to talk about youth migration and the situation of security in Ethiopia, in the Horn of Africa. Basically, I'm going to take ideas from a book that we recently published with colleagues, but I added up some ideas about the situation of security in our region. Let me put the video. Yes, good. Well, first, very broad ideas about migration. Ethiopia is the second most populous country in Africa, in the continent, next to Nigeria. Over 120 million population in the country exists. The population is very useful, probably next to Uganda. Ethiopia has one of the highest useful strata of the population. Over 70% of the population is under 30. So you can imagine the problem of youth unemployment. So youth migration is also becoming a very important issue in the country's political economy. The rate of international migration has been historically low, even in comparison to the rest of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, but it is increasing. Much of the migration is irregular. There are three major routes. One to South Africa, that is the southern route. The eastern route take young people to Saudi Arabia, to the countries of the Gulf. The northern route through the Mediterranean take young people to Europe. So largely the migration is irregular and the participants are young people. Approaches, in this book, we used two main approaches to analyze youth migration from Ethiopia. One is transition. Transition is a very important concept for countries like Ethiopia because we are in a transition. There is demographic transition, there is socioeconomic transition, there is political transition. There are also global transitions in terms of the global power structure. So we thought transition is an important fact, particularly demographic transition. In countries like Ethiopia, where there is high population growth, the ability of the economy to absorb young people who finish school is very much limited. So there is this possibility, there is this need for internal and external migration. We used also this theoretical concept called assemblage. I'm not going to discuss about that now. And then the second section, the Horn of Africa and security. Many scholars use Buzan's concept of security complex to examine the situation in the Horn of Africa, how the region, in the previous presentation, Ali was talking about the low level of economic integration in the Horn of Africa in comparison to other regions of the continent. That's true. But when you look at the situation of conflicts in the Horn of Africa are very much interconnected. The conflict that emerges in the Sudan spills over or would have an implication on the neighboring countries. A conflict that happens in Ethiopia would have also an implication in the neighboring countries. So
Dr. Senake, your PowerPoint isn't moving. I think you was talking through the PowerPoint, but we are on page 1. We haven't moved at all.
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah, right. So,
yeah, I don't have to make it
okay.
full.
I think what you do, don't do the full screen. Just move, one slide after the other. That will work fine. Yeah, it's okay now.
Yes. So the Horn of Africa.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay. Yes.
Yep.
So the Horn of Africa is a security complex region. Conflicts are very much interconnected. And when you look at the situation in Ethiopia, there are internal conflicts. These internal conflicts have implications on youth mobility. The country's politics is heavily ethnicized. We have an ethnic federal structure, which has its own merits and demerits. One implication of the ethnic political structure, it limits internal mobility, the ability of people to move from one place in the country to another is getting very much limited because of conflicts, because of also the politics of identity, the politics of ethnicity. These limitations contribute to irregular international migration. Another recent phenomenon which also affects the problem of migration, which has an implication on migration, is securitization of informal businesses, small businesses in bigger cities like Addis Ababa. Because of fear of insecurity, the government has been cracking down on informal businesses. As a result, the ability of young people, the chance of young people to come from the rural areas and dwell and work in urban spaces like Addis Ababa is getting very much limited. And also conflict and violence. In Tigray, the conflict has stopped, but still the implications of the conflict are there. A large number of young people from Tigray are migrating after the ending of the conflict. In the Oromia region, much of the region is affected by insurgency. In the Amara regions, there are also conflicts. All this fuel migration, cross-border forced movement of people, even people are being refugees. These conflicts significantly increase youth migration from Ethiopia. The geopolitical volatility of the Horn of Africa would have also its own implications. The Sudanese civil war, usually when civil war happens in a neighboring country, our instinct tells us the ability of people to move to countries affected by conflict would be diminished. I think the contrary could be also true from the experience of Ethiopian migration to Yemen, when the Yemeni civil war was raging and when Yemen was affected by the cholera epidemic. A large number of migrants from the Horn of Africa were going to Yemen because the ability of the authorities to control the borders was limited. So probably now, we don't have evidence, probably because of the civil war in Sudan, I think there could be also a high number of migration to the Sudan. Some colleagues working in the border regions tell us a lot of Sudanese come to Ethiopia seeking security, protection from the civil war. The number of young people coming back from Sudan is very much limited. Some say there are close to 5-6 million Ethiopians. I don't know the statistics. It's very difficult to verify, but a large number of Ethiopians live in the Sudan. But then the number of people who have returned from the Sudan is very much limited. Tensions between Ethiopia and Somalia over the Memorandum of Understanding, the participation of extra-regional actors in the political tension could also probably in the future increase in security and may lead to migration. Another area that we examined, very important to look at, linkages between migration policies and irregular migration. Migration policies within Ethiopia and also in the receiving countries encourage irregular migration. Those who migrate to the Gulf countries are not given protection. As a result, a large number of people decide to use the irregular channel to migrate. The Europeans also, by and large, try to limit the migration of people from the Horn of Africa, from Africa. There are no pathways for regular and legal migration to Europe. As a result, all these preventive kinds of policies contribute, strengthen irregular migration, which are controlled by brokers, traffickers, sometimes even by criminal gangs. Facilitation of irregular migration in Ethiopia. The government and international actors usually teach. There is a lot of effort in the part of the government and international agencies, IOM and others, to bring public education about the adversities of irregular migration. And also, brokers are penalized, they are criminalized, but people at the grassroots level consider the brokers as facilitators. These are people who facilitate the migration of people from the countryside, from the rural areas to countries like Saudi Arabia, Sudan, South Africa, and even to Europe. Drivers of youth migration, long-term unemployment. As I've said earlier, the population is large, high level of population growth. Tens of thousands of young people finish their college education every year and join the labor market. What the labor market provides is limited. As a result, many people see migration as an alternative path. There is also this feeling migration is being taken as a mark of transition for some communities. Young people use migration as escape from hopelessness. They finish school, they stay at home. Sometimes there are also tensions within the household. Yeah, families expect, parents expect young people to finish their school and start their own life and support them. But because of unemployment, they are not able to do that. So some young people, particularly in those areas which are used to migration for a long period of time, migration is being seen as a mark of transition from youthhood to adulthood. Migration aspiration and global and local ideas of the good life in rural communities. Because of globalization, because of ICT technologies, because of closer connection between people in different parts of the world, there is this thinking among the youth going abroad is going to change their lives. They're going to change the lives of their families. As a result, they decide to migrate. Remittances is also one dimension of migration, a pull factor. Because of low level of payment, people decide to migrate. Coming to the conclusion, youth migration could be seen as an element of holistic human security situation. The youth, because of lack of employment, because of problems of socioeconomic well-being, even questions of political freedom, security, they decide to migrate. Young people usually likely to vote with their feet and migrate because the situation domestically is in a very dire state. Despite European fears of irregular migration from Africa, current security and security trends do not offer optimism. Increased insecurity tends to lead to more migration, not less. Addressing irregular migration from the Horn of Africa, stemming irregular migration requires multifaceted actions, including bringing security and peace, promoting democracy, and fostering socio-economic development in the region. Given the current situation, achieving these goals looks like a difficult exercise. Another important area to look at, opening European and Gulf labor markets for regular migration is crucial. For example, recently the German government signed an agreement with the Kenyan government to recruit tens of thousands of workers from Kenya. Such an approach should be extended to the other countries of the region. But to realize such possibilities, the other countries of the region should also improve their technical and vocational education, and also they need to bring security and calm within the wider region. Outlook, given the current trend is irregular migration is likely to continue rather than decline in the near future. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Sinake, for this very important angle to the discussion, the drivers of youth migration. So in a sense, you and Dr. Ali Muhammad have sort of given us two very overlapping perspectives. The youth out of desperation and hopelessness end up fighting, being radicalized to fight, or they end up fleeing. So it's either fight or flee. And both are, of dire consequences for the continent because, Africa needs its young people to be productive, not to engage in violence, and not to run away, because the most important resource of any country, it's young, productive people. Thank you.